Here we have three elements, intertwined elements that we shall be discussing during this time. The first is pastoral accompaniment. This is something that is practical. It's a know-how. How do we accompany people as church, as religious institution during this time of the pandemic? And time of pandemic, this is obvious. We have been experiencing this for the past 5 months. And this pandemic has brought about not only economic but also political crisis. And this is in the making. As we move along, this is snowballing among us. We cannot deny that we are now living in a new era. We can no longer go back to the year 2019. We have to condition our minds to this. And this new era has happened so suddenly. Usually, eras evolve, but this has caught us all of a sudden. And our minds will have to accommodate this new reality. What are the characteristics of this new era where we are in? One characteristic is there is the danger of infection. And this danger of infection will always be there. It will be with us. As we know, this will not just go away of a sudden, even if there will be vaccines that will come out. Still, the danger will always be there. The second characteristic is the economic recession. Kung hirap na noon, mas hirap tayo ngayon. And economic activities will not go back as when we started at the beginning of this year, 2020. So, it will have take on new forms, and somehow, we are now in economic recession. The third element is online communications will be here to stay. Of course, online communication was already there in 2019 and even before. But now we realize that this is really part of our life. And this has been stressed during this time. And fourthly, global warming continues. The globe does not stop warming because of the pandemic. But if we don't change our lifestyle, this warming will continue and will bring about also global crisis. And finally, there is the danger of authoritarian rule. And we see this danger of authoritarian rule not only in the country, but all over the world. Somehow, many governments, many leaders have taken this crisis in order to become more authoritarian. And this is also something that we have to deal with during this new reality. We will go through these elements one by one and see how we can accompany our people during this time. So the first, danger of infection will always be around, will be there. Before, when we think about health, we think more about beauty. We think more about figure. So, about our body, we take care of our body so that we become beautiful, so that we have a good figure. But now, there is a concern for being healthy. We are more concerned how we can remain healthy, strong, resistant against the virus. So, the way we look at our body, we take care of our body, somehow the care for the beauty recedes. Besides, the beauty will not be noticed when we have the masks on us. We can compare the virus COVID-19 to leprosy in biblical times. They have many things in common. First, that in biblical times, people avoid the leprous because they are afraid nandidiri sila sa mga lepers. Pero hindi lang sila nandidiri because there is also the stigma of leprosy. Dahil sa hindi nila alam saan nanggaling yon, baka madaling kumalat. So, the problem is not only the illness, but also the stigma. The big difference between leprosy and COVID-19 is that you can see leprosy, but you cannot see COVID-19. But still, there is the stigma attached to it. And not only the stigma, or even part of the stigma, is also the blame game. No, in the olden times, a person becomes a leper because they believe it is a result of his own sin. So leprosy is the external manifestation of sinfulness. Now, there is also the blame game with COVID-19. When we see that one is infected, somehow, what comes behind our mind, papaya kasi. He did not care or she did not care. O pasaway, hindi sumunod. Kaya dahil dyan, nagka-COVID siya. Pabaya, pasaway. There's also the great unknown. For leprosy, they didn't know where it came from, what kind of disease this is, and because of that, there was no cure at the time of the Bible. Also now, after 5 months of COVID-19, still scientists are not really so sure what this virus is. So it's also difficult to find the proper medicine against it. And as in olden times, those people with leprosy are being shunned out of the community, and somehow this is being politicized by their society. So also now, COVID-19 is being politicized. It's one way of having control over the others. This quarantine problem is a kind of a control, and not only politicized but even militarized. That the military is the one that is being most used in trying to control the spread of this virus. So we can find some similarities between leprosy and COVID-19. What did Jesus do to the lepers? How did Jesus attend to this situation in his time? And probably here, we can also get an idea, what would Jesus do in this time of the COVID pandemic? So first, Jesus did not keep away from the lepers. In fact, he touched them. He put himself in danger of being infected. Somehow he broke the taboo by keeping in touch with them. He did not shy away from them. Second, he healed them. He acted on them. He did not just let them by. When the lepers called to Jesus, he attended to them. He did not turn his back away from them. And another attitude of Jesus, he followed the religious protocol of Israel in those times, that it would be the priest who would determine that the leprosy has already gone away from the person and the person can already enter back into society. So the examination of the priests in those times was part of the protocol towards the lepers. And finally, Jesus did not only heal them, but He brought them back to the community. The intention of Jesus was not just that they would not be sick and become healthy, is that they can come back to their families, to their communities. Would not this also be the way that we should deal with people with COVID-19 as Jesus did to them? That we follow our protocols, hygienic protocols. So it would not be Christian if we go around without any mask at all. If we don't care about our social and the physical distancing. It would not be Christian if we don't wash our hands frequently to keep ourselves and others from being infected. But we should not also turn our back from those people who have the coronavirus, who are infected. In fact, we should come to them to help them. Yes, with the proper protocols, or with the proper safeguards, but we should help them. And in the history of the church, when there were plagues, Christians, and many of them are saints, would go out of their way to come and help the people. And to integrate them back to the community. That's why we should not feel that they have this stigma with them, that we don't care for them anymore. So the way that Jesus treated the lepers could also be a way for us that we can treat those people with this sickness and help them out. Another way that we can deal with this problem of the infection is to build up our immunity, to become strong. We don't know where the virus come from, but if we are strong, we could resist. The body could resist when the virus do come. That's why we are told to eat healthy foods. So here, we would be asked to become more healthy in the choice of the things that we eat. Lots of vegetables, lots of fruits. We get enough rest. The body builds itself up by having enough rest. 8 hours, 7 hours of rest. And we have not taken care of this rest before. We have lost ourselves in entertainment, in work, and we have not taken enough rest. So now, it's a call that we let the body also rebuild itself by giving it the proper rest. And we need also to do exercise. Again, before we did go to the gyms to make exercises to help a well-fit body, a good figure. But now, let us get the exercise in order that we may be healthy, even during the time of the pandemic. And another thing that is free for all is to get enough sunlight. Now, even if we are cooped up in our own rooms, in our own houses, but we should also find ways in order that we get enough sunlight in order to build up our resistance. So these are very simple things that should not now become part of our own lifestyle. And then, always be vigilant. Because we don't know the enemy, and it may come in many other ways That's why we should be vigilant in constant hand washing, in putting on properly the face masks. Unfortunately, we see people who have the face mask but not put on properly. And always to take our own bath, to cleanse ourselves, especially when we go out. Pagdating sa bahay, maligo agad, to protect ourselves and to protect our own families and our own communities. So that would be a new way of doing things now with regards to our health. The second aspect of this new era is economic recession. The economy has gone down. Many stores and companies have closed. And also, many people have become unemployed. It is harder to get work. Therefore, for those of us who have work, let us value our work and do it well. It is now a rare commodity. Although we have always the problem of joblessness before, but it's even worse now because of our own situation. So let us value our work and tell people who have work to value their work. And another challenge for us is to constantly learn new skills so that we can be competitive. We have to tell our office workers, our students, those who work with us, don't be contented to do what you are doing now. Learn more skills because the job market becomes more competitive because of this situation. And because of the economic recession, we all need to be thrifty, magtipid, go to the essentials. Kailangan ba yan? Kasi hirap na ang pera. We cannot just enter to the consumeristic mentality that we had before. Go back to the essentials. And one of the reasons we learned from the lockdown is to look for and experience the essential. Now, for the past months, we have seen the essentials, like the essential needs. We could not go to the malls to buy knickknacks. Now, what we have to go to do is to try to see that what we have are properly utilized. And if we have to buy those things that are needed. We've also seen the importance of essential relationships. Relationships with our families, with our confreres, with the people around us. And these essential relationships have to be built up. Having stayed together, we have learned, hopefully, how to live with each other well. And then also the essential expenses. Even in our churches, even in our schools, there are many things that we could do, but we are trying to see what are really the things that are essential at the moment. So this is something that we have learned during this time of the lockdown, the meaning of the essential. And now that there is a gradual opening up of the quarantine, in order to avoid the second, the third, the fourth wave of infections, people are cautious. They open up only the essential. Again, essential services. No, not everything, but only the essential services. We ask people to come for work, but we choose the essential workforce. Now, those persons and those jobs that are really needed. And then we do only essential activities. So the going out, the celebrations, those can wait. No, even in our own churches, when we have the weddings, only the ancient people there. Hindi na kailangan yung mga abay. Basta nandun yung ikakasal. Nandun yung pare. No, nandun yung ninong at ninang. Isa o dalawang ninong at ninang. Also for our baptism, the essential people. Hindi na yung iba. So, here also, as we open up gradually, let us discern the essential things that we do. Because of the economic recession, fourthly, we need to be enterprising, to make use of our assets. Well, mga lupa, mga bahay, mga kaalaman. And let us ask all members of the community to cooperate and to contribute. Wala dapat patay na baraha. No, kasi tayong lahat ay dapat magsikap. So be enterprising. This is part of our stewardship. That we make good use of the means that we have. Because there are so many people who are struggling. The fourth characteristic of the new era is the online. And online is here to stay. So the importance now of the digital world. It would mean that we have to learn how to do things online. Kung hindi tayo matututo, maiiwan tayo ng panahon. And we cannot give the reason those things are just for the millennials. Matanda na kami, hindi na namin kaya yan. We can always learn and learn something. Or else, we will not be part of the development of our times. Not only do we have to learn more about the online, but we have to invest on the internet and the gadgets. Not for entertainment, but this will now become necessary for our work, for reaching out to people, and for learning. For the students, they have now the e-learning, online learning. Now, they need the internet. They need the gadgets in order to study. For our work in the ministry, we can reach out to more people if we have good connections, if we have good gadgets. Now, and for many people work at home, they also need proper connections. That's why we have to invest now. If before we were investing on buildings, on classrooms, on auditoriums, now we have to invest on our internet infrastructure. Now for better connectivity. And not only with people around us, but from people all over the world. And naturally, for us in the church, not only for those in the schools, we need to learn online teaching. Know how to get resources online, how to pass on knowledge online. So what we are doing now, this kind of recollection, this kind of formation that we are doing here, these are attempts in order to use the internet to reach out to more people and to bring the message of the good news. And then finally, we have to be aware that during this time of the pandemic, there is the rising head of authoritarianism. People have made use of this situation in order to get better control over others. Naturally, we need control. We need to tell the people what to do. We need to get our acts together. But there are things that are happening that are beyond the concerns of our people now, and yet they are being done in order to control others. In the Philippines here, we know that about the signs of the ABS-CBN case, the terror bill, now the terror law, the Maria Ressa convictions. These are all signs of growing authoritarianism. And with that, also the sign of passing on death penalty to create more fear on people. So the government is creating an atmosphere of control and fear that we should not speak out. So this is the new situation. Do we go along with this? They will be successful if we also have fears among us and let that fear dictate that we are not able to participate anymore in governance because we are afraid. So we have to prepare our people, our students, our families, our parishioners for this authoritarianism by making them aware of what is happening and what are their implications in our lives. So we have to continually educate people, open up their minds. Our concern is not just to go against the government. Our concern is more how the people can be aware of the hidden agenda behind these moves so that they can properly decide what to do and not be controlled by fear and more especially not to be controlled by apathy na walang kibo na lang, indifferent na lang. And this idea of control is also manifested by the spread of false news, of fake news. Precisely at this time, we need to know what is the real score, what really is happening. But it is more difficult now because of the fake news. Unfortunately, the government should be guiding us is still the one that is promoting this false understanding of what's happening. Kaya hindi maaasahan ang kanilang sinasabi, ano ba ang nangyayari. So we have to look for other sources. So with the internet, it is a two-edged sword. On the one hand, the internet can be used to spread false news. On the other hand, the internet can be used in order to look at the other sources of news so that we can get a better understanding of what is happening among us now. And then global warming. So our crisis with the environment does not stop because of the COVID. But in fact, probably the COVID crisis has been also a result of the change in our environment and our lack of care for the environment. But we learn many things from this pandemic that could be useful for our engagement with the environment. One lesson that we learn is that everything is connected. We have been told about this so many times. Pope Francis repeated this many times in Laudato Si. Everything is connected. But now, we have experienced this firsthand. Everything is connected. The whole world is connected. What started in Wuhan, China, has spread all over the world. And no one could say that this will not come to us. Even such small countries, as the countries in the Pacific, they also are affected by the COVID. Really, everything is connected. Businesses, the market, the people, our jobs, everything is connected. Hopefully, we learn this lesson, which is very important in our engagement with the environment. And the second, we have said about this already, this has been stressed so many times, go back to the essentials. We can simplify our life. And being more simple, we become more healthy. mas mapatipid, mas mabuti sa ating mundo. Hindi mabuti sa mga kapitalista kapag tayo mas matpatipid, ngunit mas mabuti sa mundo. And we avoid the throwaway culture. Wala tayong masyadong itatapon kung wala naman tayong masyadong binibili. No? And this also is part of the message of Laudato Si. No? If we want to take care of the world, avoid consumerism. Go back to the essentials. And I'd like to stress once more my favorite in Laudato Si, paragraph 222, when the Pope spoke about less is more. Actually, when we acquire less, we become more of a person, more in our community. And let me quote this Laudato Si paragraph 222. Christian spirituality proposes a growth marked with moderation and the capacity to be happy with little. Yes, there will be growth, but marked by moderation. And not just try to grow now at the expense of the future. And this is what we do many times in agriculture. We use a lot of fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, in the hope of harvesting more, but in the long run, destroying the earth. And the capacity to be happy with little is not having more that will make us happy. It is a return. This Christian spirituality is a return to that simplicity which allows us to stop and appreciate the small things. Appreciate the baby. Appreciate the husband, the wife. Appreciate the comforter. Appreciate the friend. To be grateful for the opportunities which affords us. Let us not just look for what we don't have. There are many things that we have. Let us be grateful about this. Let us be grateful that we are able to pray, that we have the Blessed Sacrament with us, that we can still have daily Mass. No, appreciate the fact that we can eat squarely every day. No, these things are important, although we don't mind them at all. That we have enough water to wash, that we have the sunlight, that we have the fresh air. It is a spirituality detached from what we possess. Be spiritually detached from what we possess. We use what is there, but not being attached to them, to the gadgets, to the machines, to the things that we have. And a spirituality that does not succumb to the sadness for what we lack. Yes, we cannot have everything, but we don't need to have everything. Let us not be taken by the advertisements that once you have this, you'll be happy. Not necessarily so. So not to succumb to the sadness for what we lack. This is very important. Less is more. Let me read once more. Christian spirituality proposes a growth marked by moderation and the capacity to be happy with little. It is a return to that simplicity which allows us to stop and appreciate the small things, to be grateful for the opportunities which life affords us, to be spiritually detached from what we possess, and not to succumb to the sadness for what we lack. This implies avoiding the dynamic of dominion and the mere accumulation of pleasure. And we have experienced this firsthand during these 4 months of the quarantine. Hopefully, this become a habit. It is something that we appreciate because this is something that our world needs now in order that we can stop this global warming. Now, in this situation of the new era, we need spirituality to face this new era. Spirituality is our relationship with God. And this relationship influences our relationship with other persons and with things. There cannot be spirituality without God, because the basis of spirituality is our relationship with God. But this relationship with God does not stop with God alone. It influences our relationship with persons, our relationship with others. Kaya kailangan natin itong malakas na relationship sa Panginoon. At kailangan natin yan ngayong panahon ng pandemic, ngayong panahon ng bagong era. Let us enter this new era with strong spirituality. Let me quote Pope Francis in Christus Vivit, paragraph 158. Seeking the Lord, keeping His word, is entrusting our life to Him, and growing in virtues. All these things make young hearts strong. That is why you need to stay connected to Jesus, to remain online with Him, since you will not grow happy and holy by your own efforts and intelligence alone. Thus, just as you try not to lose your connection to the internet, make sure that you may stay connected to the Lord. Here you see the Pope using modern analogy. And we have seen how important this being connected to the internet during this pandemic. What would have happened if we had no internet during this time? How bored our life would have been, how meaningless our life could have been. But because of the internet, even if we stayed at home, we were able to be useful. We were able to connect with others, even continue to make our ministries. It's an apt analogy to our relationship with Jesus. Without this relationship with Jesus, all the efforts that we do would have no meaning at all. That's why to keep our relationship with Him, to be online with Him, is important as we enter into this new stage. And the Pope once again reiterated, not only to the young, but to all of us, all the faithful, whatever the state or condition, are called by the Lord, each in his or her own way, to that perfect holiness by which the Father Himself is perfect. Everybody is called to perfection. The words of Jesus, "Be holy as your heavenly Father is holy," is meant for all. That's why even in this time of the lockdown, of the pandemic, we don't let loose this desire, this effort to be holy. But we continue to be holy. And with the new era, all the more we should strive with the effort of being holy. Let us not put aside the desire to be holy because we have to adjust to the new times. Part of the adjustment is how we can have that holiness. Why? Because holiness is ultimately the high standard of ordinary Christian living, as St. John Paul II told us. High standard of ordinary Christian living. And even in our houses, in our convents, in our own churches, we continue to live as good Christians and in a high quality as good Christians. So the Pope in Gaudete et Exsultate told us, do not be afraid of holiness. It will take away none of your energy, vitality, or joy. On the contrary, you will become what God had in mind when He created you, and you will be faithful to your deepest self. It is in holiness that we will find ourselves. Let us not take holiness something for granted, something that is not important, no, something that would take away our zest for life. No, it will bring us more energy, more vitality. And to be holy in our times is to be able to respond to the call of God. Now, not before, not in the future, now. To respond to the call of God now in our times, during this time of the pandemic. And how do we respond to our times now? First, know what is happening in the development of the virus, in the development of society, and how the government is responding to the needs of the people. Know the situation. Be in touch. So many people have spent the pandemic looking at the movies. Kaya malaki ang business ngayon, no, ng mga movies, Netflix. But the problem with the movies, they keep us away from being in touch with what's happening now. No, we live in another world. But here, keep in touch. The Lord is here, walking among us, even in these difficulties. Second, we need to discern because of the fake news. We have to sift the true from the false. And we have to spread the good news. Not only do we have to know what is false and true, but we have to spread the good news so that the fake news will be overcome. That's why we have to engage in social media actively, helping to spread the truth. And with the social media, all of us can be missionaries in spreading the truth. That's something that we can do now, part of our holiness. And then, we should point out the dangers and also point out the possibilities of our times. Point out the dangers. We have said about the authoritarian rule, but we've also to point out the possibilities. There are new ways of engaging, in our apostolate, in helping the people. We have also to encourage people to speak out and to act together in this situation. We cannot survive this situation alone. With the economic recession that we have now, we have to need to support one another. And if there are issues that come out, let us encourage people to speak out so that they would be heard. And then the Pope has always told us, imagine a new world. Be creative in responding to the times. The Holy Spirit too is among us in our times, in this time. He's never absent. God is Lord of history. He is marching with us. And God is Savior. We are on the road to salvation. So it's good to reflect and to pray. Where do these events lead us to salvation? What are the elements of salvation in our times here that we are experiencing? And as we have said, this is a time of change. It's a new era. We cannot live in a new era having the old mindset and the old attitudes and the old habits. That's why in this time of change, in this new era, there should be new lifestyle, new attitudes, new ways of reaching out to others, reaching out to our communities. Do not be held on by the past. And this is something that is difficult. The most difficult things to change are the mindsets, the mentality, the perspective. But if we don't change, we'll be left behind. We will not be able to cope up. So the change has happened so suddenly. But little by little, let us cope up with a new way of doing things. So I would leave you these questions for your personal reflections and maybe for your own community sharings. You share this also with the people in your parish, with your religious community, with your friends. Something worth reflecting on. First question, how do we do youth ministry in this pandemic? I just use youth ministry, but you can also see how do we do music ministry? How do we do liturgical ministry? How do we do the works of charity in this pandemic? How do we reach out to the young now? How do we reach out to the poor? How do we reach out to our parishioners? How do we reach out to our community members in this situation? It is really new. We could not do what we did before. Having our campings, having our meetings, having our own concerts. Those cannot be done anymore. Second, what is community life for us now? How do we create community within our religious houses, with our collaborators, with our parishioners? We cannot live Christian life alone. The Pope has pointed out the danger of online masses. Yes, during this time, we have to be contented with having online masses. But the danger is we would tend to privatize religion within our houses, at our times, at our convenience. We lose the sense of community. And as Christians, we need community. But how do we create this community life? Even in our religious communities, 5 of us, 6 of us, 4 of us. How do we do this? When we have a lot of limitations because of the quarantine. And lastly, as a religious community, how do we respond to the great needs of the people around us, to the call of our country? We can also say as a parish community. We can also say as committed community Christians. How do we respond to the great needs of people around us? And because of this situation, there are a lot of needs. Just think of the economic recession. Just think of those who are sick. Just think of the frontliners, medical frontliners. No, just think of global warming. How do we respond to these needs? And to our country, when we have these authoritarian tendencies, we cannot let these things just go by without us being part of this, because we are part of this world, because we are part of this new situation.